G'day kids, Briggsy here on the coffee run today. I've got Wayne Mahony with me today in the car. Now, is it Mahony or Mahony?
Well, it's Irish, but it's actually Mahony.
It is Mahony.
Yeah.
Do you get frustrated when people say Mahony?
Nah, you get used to it.
Because it's an Australian thing to have to pronounce every single syllable and letter and word that's in the...
No, I'll go with Mahony or Mahoney. It is what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I hated if someone called me Briggsy or something like that. You know, it just doesn't make sense. So.
Well, that's a polite way of saying some of the other things they call you. So
that is true. That is true.
That might be edited.
Absolutely. Mate, your role is the South East Queensland Community Head Umpires Coach. Correct. You've been brought into that role this year. It's been developed this year to oversee all of the coaches.
Yep.
How have you found it? Just a bit of a background on, what's it been like so far?
First and foremost, bit of an eye-opener. I found I've been holding back a fair bit in due respect to the senior coaches that are underneath me.
Yep.
So giving them the due respect and a little bit of space, and tend to find I've got to come in and I've got to learn so much.
Yep.
From an AFL point of view, even though I've played the game, coached the game, but from an umpire's point of view is letting them have a little bit of leeway.
So you've never umpired and officiated a game of AFL before?
Yeah, I have, but only under 12s and kids, and
not so much senior football.
No senior footy at all.
Yeah. So where did you do your coaching then?
Did coaching for my kids' footy teams at Everton Wolves, which is where Maine play.
Yep.
So I've gone right through there with from Auskick right through to the under 14s.
Okay. And so just a bit of background also on what other officiating that you have done in the past. What was that?
Done heaps of coaching in all other formats of other sports, whether it be AFL, European handball, taekwondo, and hockey, a few other sports like that.
Yeah.
But probably the biggest thing that I've done umpiring wise is I've a international referee with taekwondo. Okay. So I did my first referee's course in, I think it's about 1986 or 1987.
Right.
And I've been refereeing ever since.
And what's the difference about, obviously people getting their accreditation, learning the art of, and observations and that. It's probably the main thing what I want to talk to you about is observing that. How do they go about it?
All right, so we, as an Olympic sport, we've got a lot of KPIs and a lot of things we've got to tick off. And I find we have to be, I'm just really surprised actually, we're a lot more officious with what we have to do taekwondo wise for our referees. So we have to, it's compulsory that you will upgrade and refresh every 2 years.
Okay.
Otherwise you are no longer an umpire as such.
Yep.
And I do presenting, so I conduct courses in the Queensland area, and I mean all of Queensland. I teach the courses and refresher courses, whether that be all the way from level 6, which is a beginner, right through to the guys that are looking at going to do international tournaments.
Yeah, right. And so you're going around at the moment to a lot of the grounds, you get a fair bit of feedback for the umpires. How have you found they receive that information? So using that background on the taekwondo as well, how do you find that the AFL umpires are receiving that information, and what are the key things that you look for after you have that chat at the quarter time, half time?
Most of it doesn't seem too bad. It's sort of being accepted quite well. So I don't know, some of them don't know that I have never officiated a senior level of umpiring, so I don't know that.
Yeah.
But I think they have an understanding that obviously I've played footy, I've coached footy, so they've seen that side of it. And there's some things that are very, very similar across from what we do with taekwondo. So we have to try to be side on to contests like you guys. Right. But you guys have got to run in 15, 20 metres. We've really only got to run in 2 or 3 metres.
Yes. Yep.
So very similar in a lot of ways.
You still got to sheepdog the pack.
Spot on. Exactly right.
You've got to get in the right position to make the right decision.
Spot on. Exactly the same. And same with hand signals. You've got to put the right hand signals in for the right call, etc. But we're a lot more controlled, as in we have coaches who can stand up and complain about one of the calls that we've done, and it'll go to video, as opposed to what you guys, it's just
there and then
and there on the spot.
Sort of a bit like the soccer with the World Cup coming up with
worse than that. Worse than that with the video.
It takes longer?
Yep. So we have 2 TVs going on opposite sides of a court.
Yeah.
And if you make a call and you do a hand signal, and the coach is not happy with your hand signal against his player, he puts up a card and complains about it. It'll go to video.
Okay.
And looked at 2 different angles, And if you're wrong with your call and the coach is right, it's quite frowned upon that you've made a bad call against the coach. The coach will get his award and maybe a point, or whatever the case may be. And then we sort of have a conversation because it's duly noted, etc.
Yeah.
And when you do international tournaments, the statistics behind it are phenomenal. And they really, really look on that and say, okay, we don't want this coach, we don't want this referee back because he's made some bad calls. So we're a lot more officious in that respect.
Yep.
But I'm finding as the year progresses that a lot of the senior umpires and the other umpires are really taking on board some of the things that I'm saying. So the feedback, I think, has been accepted quite well because the vision from what you guys see out on the field is different to what someone sees on the sideline.
Yeah, for sure.
And I generally put down a question mark or two, and I'll go and ask a question and ask them their interpretation of how did they see it.
Yeah.
And what was their vision, just to get their interpretation, because they might have a completely different interpretation of what just happened on the field as opposed to what I've just seen on the sideline.
Yeah.
And you go through that process. It's not like you're right and I'm wrong or vice versa.
Yeah.
It is still about making sure the right decision was made and then the right outcome comes from that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So going back to that, the coach having a review, unlike the score review with the AFL.
Yep.
You reckon Brad Scott, something like that, to be, calling a decision on the field, go back, let's have a video review.
I think he'd love to. I think personally he'd just love to, but time-wise it doesn't work.
People complain about a game going for 2.5 hours at the moment. It'd probably end up going about 7 or 8 hours, I reckon, if you called back
that's exactly what's happening with us. So we just had a game on the weekend up at Caboolture.
Yeah.
And that was 220 fighters.
Yeah.
And we had New Zealand, South Australia, Victoria,
Yeah.
And in the senior black belts, if you allow them to have too many video calls, you got games that last 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And it's just over the top and controlled, and we just go, nah.
Yeah.
So we try to lose a lot of it. But tending to find now what happens is, if the coach stands up and waves his little flag, and he doesn't get the call go his way, he's lost it. He can't make any more calls, period.
Okay, yep.
So a lot more control in that situation.
Yeah. Mate, the last thing I wanted to talk about, obviously there's been a fair bit of infrastructure put in around the coaches. Obviously bringing yourself in as the first time, having a head coach, field umpire coaches, obviously Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, boundary umpire coaches, goal umpire coaches and so on. How have you found that the umpires coming to training and the environment, I guess, the culture around training, has it changed by having those structures in place?
I think it will. Actually, I think it will in long term. I think it really will. I think what they're doing with Gold Coast and Sunny Coast is really, really working. Brisbane, we're a little bit further behind on some of that. And I think some of that really comes back to, we don't have a lot of juniors train with us on a Monday and a Wednesday. And I really love the way Sunny Coast and Gold Coast both have juniors train with them. And there's a lot more mentoring going on. I reckon that is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do enough of that in Brisbane. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I think the way Nick's trying to get around it is we may start to look at that sort of process, hopefully, because I think that is really good.
Yeah. It gives people, I guess, a pathway too, doesn't it?
Spot on.
As to, by seeing the seniors run around there.
Spot on.
That's what
I agree.
I need
Exactly right.
to do and go through.
And we've been doing a fair bit of that with our appointments to the game. So we might have some of the quaffle guys come back, or we might have some of the junior guys that are coming through the ranks.
Yeah.
And we're getting them to run with, let's say, a more mature and older head umpires, so that way they can sort of, dare I say it, mentor again.
Yes.
And start some of those processes.
Yep.
And it's really, really working. So we had a couple of good juniors that are coming through the ranks umpiring wise, and I think it's working.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I think if we can still go down that pathway long term, so like you said before, we have transparent pathways is probably a better way to put it.
Yep.
Then juniors are going to have a better understanding and go, oh, I can see what they're doing, and this is my pathway. Yeah, you might skip 1 or 2 steps, but you've got to realise that those steps are in place for a reason.
Yes.
To learn a lot more, and you might find you've only got to do 1 year at community, or you've only got to do 1 year and do a grand final and then progress to quaffle.
Yep.
You might find you've only got to do 2 years in quaffle and maybe you get a flag, you're looking at NEFL.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
luck to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Awesome. Hey mate, thank you very much for joining me and getting a bit of insight, particularly on your background from the Taekwondo and obviously transitioning that into the AFL. It's been great having you on so far this year, so thank you very
Thanks,
much.
mate.
Cheers, mate.
thanks for the coffee, that was brilliant.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.